Grammar is a big, complicated topic. In fact, it's going to require its whole own video. But especially as language learners, what are we supposed to do to more effectively learn grammar? Should we be studying Duolingo-style grammar trees, or using textbooks and grammar drills, or occasionally doing grammar lookups? But how do you even do those? Or should you completely ignore grammar and just do nothing at all and spend all of that time with your target language? The answer is pretty nuanced, and so I'm going to break it up into a couple of different videos. This video is about concrete tips that you can use to actively improve your grammar study. And then the next video, coming soon, will be about what grammar even is. Alright, the first thing to know is that vocabulary is more important than grammar. If somebody says to you, vegetable I cut, you pretty much get that they are cutting vegetables. I'm cutting vegetables. But in an alternate scenario that you didn't know the word for cutting, and they say I vegetable, they could be saying I eat vegetables, I buy vegetables. It's completely unclear because you just don't know that word, you don't know the meaning. And so for the first several hundred hours of immersion, vocabulary is going to be your big barrier. And maybe a couple of small things with grammar, but you can mostly skip over those. But at pretty much any point in the process, you should be doing what's called grammar priming. Priming is when you learn something about the language beforehand to get you ready to learn it. This is most commonly done with words. You prime words in something like Anki, memorize, whatever it is, and then later on in your immersion, you see that word and you can more easily learn it because you already know the meaning and have it connected to something inside your brain. And the same thing can be applied to grammar. At some point, you might learn tidbits and pieces about the grammar of your target language and then come across those concepts later on. This makes the whole process a lot more enjoyable because you're not constantly frustrated and asking why is it like this? I don't get it. And it allows you to more easily understand what something's doing there. Let's look at an example with Czech, since probably none of you are learning it. And now I'm going to prime you on a piece of grammar. In Czech, there's something that you can do to the end of a word to make it become sort of with that thing. We're going to assume that you already know the word zeleninu for vegetables, krájím for I cut, and nůž for knife. Let's say that you come across this sentence in your immersion. Zeleninu krájím nožem. You know the word zeleninu and krájím, and you see that the person is cutting something with a knife, and so you go, oh, that must be the modification to mean that vegetables I cut with a knife or using a knife. You didn't learn any new words there, you just connected the fact that there's this ending and realized that nožem is probably just nůž in a different version. And that's grammar priming. This general awareness combined with time and exposure will help you to internalize a lot of these patterns without even really trying. When it comes time to actually use them, you will have to explicitly practice and study them, but it's like 20 times easier than trying to practice and study them before actually being able to understand anything. As a personal anecdote, a couple of years ago I took a Spanish class after already being more or less fluent in Spanish, and I was able to go through that grammar lesson insanely fast. The teacher was actually really surprised at how quickly I did it because I knew all of the words and I understood all of the sentence easily. And that makes things just so much more fluid and functional later on down the line. And so now there are two different ways to go about grammar priming: explicit exposure and noticing and asking. That explicit exposure we just did with Czech. It's when you learn something beforehand and then go out and search for it or maybe come across it randomly. There's a lot of different ways to do this, but I'm not really going to go super in depth. Some people take a grammar textbook and read the first few pages of each chapter, but don't do the drills. Or you can use an app like Busuu or Duolingo or any of those other grammar-ish apps. The other way, noticing and asking, is a lot more interesting and, in my opinion, a lot more fun and engaging. And this happens in your immersion when you have questions about things that you notice that you don't quite fully understand. Maybe you get the meaning, but you're not exactly sure why, and so you want to ask about it. For example, let's say that you're immersing in Spanish and you hear someone offer to somebody else, le abro, to open the door for them. And you're not really sure why they said it like that. Shouldn't it be something like la abro or te abro? Why would they use le there? And so you can ask somebody like a native speaker or a high-level learner of that language, but in my opinion, nowadays the best option is to ask an AI chatbot. For a lot of languages, they're able to give really good feedback nearly instantaneously, and you don't have to feel bad, wait, or be embarrassed about your question. AI obviously isn't perfect, but neither are native speakers. I've gotten plenty of bad explanations from natives about things that they thought they understood. In fact, I've come to prefer chatbots for this sort of thing because they're available 24/7, and they do a lot better summaries of ideas, and if I need, I can often check their work a lot more effectively. Plus, you can get a response in basically any language you want, depending on your preferences. AI can struggle with very specific grammar points, but for getting the general overview, it's really useful, and that's the whole point of grammar priming. There are lots of different options available if you want to give it a shot. If you have ChatGPT Premium, you can use the link below in the description for a custom GPT I made, or one of the prompts that I have below. If you're going to use the free version, I would say to be a lot more careful with it because it can ramble on a lot and makes up a lot more things. There are some other options like Claude AI, but I'm not going to try to list all of them because by the time this video is uploaded and edited, there's going to be 100 new different options. But if you don't want to deal with any of that, you can join the Refold Discord server and try out our grammar priming AI, which is connected to ChatGPT 4. It's a pretty rudimentary system, so it's not perfect, but it's a good way to get access to ChatGPT 4 for free. We're covering the costs, so at some point in the future, if it becomes too expensive, we might take it down or change it, but for now, try it out and see if you like it. There's a link to join in the description. Now, to clarify, all of this grammar priming is meant to help you understand your target language, not produce correct grammar. That comes down the line a lot later. Your only goal right now is to understand things in your target language, which is what's going to give you the ability and instinct to use that grammar later. And one last tip is to not worry about it too much. If something's not making sense to you, move on and don't worry about it. There's a lot of things that are really weird and confusing about grammar in general, and if it doesn't make sense, don't try to jam your head into that square hole. Allow yourself more time to process and understand the language and then come back to it later, and it will be a lot easier, I promise. So if you've been worrying about learning or studying grammar, I really recommend that you try this out. Just do it for a few weeks and see what you think. And leave your comment below. How have you been approaching grammar? Do you already do this? What are your thoughts? And if you're interested, make sure to join the Refold Central Discord server to get access to the grammar priming bot. That's all for this video. I really appreciate you taking the time to watch, and I look forward to your responses. Best of luck out there with your grammar priming, and I'll see you in the next video. Happy immersing!
I'm here to drop some knowledge, listen up with your ears. I got a language learning method, gonna make it crystal clear. It's called Refold, the game changer, gonna blow your mind. Immerse yourself in media, fluency you will find. Refold.